It's the show that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. Welcome back. Fastest freaking show in NFL, absolutely anywhere. Which boy? Big Johnny Stud coming to you worldwide. Brooklyn, New York, as always. Coming out that damn chair, as always. Italian Tasmanian devil out the cage, baby. Know what I mean? Follow me up on Twitter at John the Gazer Flow. Sharpening the damn razor, same handle over on Substack. Find out what all the hubbub is about. Thanks for making me a bestseller over there, where $2 a week gets you 5 pence of shit in a 2-pound box. We're burning the candle on both ends with baseball. This year I wanted to make it a point to get into the foosball a little bit earlier. We already launched a couple of draft streams. Remember, these also come out as an audio pod where they'll all be stuttering and stammering. I cut out all the blank spots of me staring at the camera like a fat fucking idiot. There, look at you. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different, again, because I'm starting on time, right? If you're where I come from, if you're not early or late, right? On time is late where I'm from. I'm going to bounce in between some streams to do round reviews. We'll get to do some player takes. I get to show off some of the tools. But I also have a cool ADP board up over at NFBC. They're doing a really good job there to get a visual representation of ADP, right? That looks like a draft board. So let's not spoil that any further. Here, check this bad boy out. See what I mean? Right, so these are not drafted teams, but to give you an idea where it falls, you see all the color coding, how the positions kind of shake out, and it's been a pretty helpful tool. Then, of course, we're going to flip around all the stuff that you get with the Substack Arena. Know what I mean, Jelly Bean? You can see that up on the board. Quick flip over to that. And then it's all the stuffs and things. Uploadable, color-coded, best ball ranks. We'll be talking about that. Team level statistics. I'm really into the betting and prop betting stuff. I think it's important to have really good team level and formatted stuff. These best ball drafts just move entirely too fast to cover any of this stuff. Where it matters, I was like the micro machine guy. And then, of course, team level stuff. Today, I just added ADP to the team tab. In theory, this should update in real time when I make my own updates. I'm expecting a little bit of a hiccup. I had an issue with a header, but I will get it. All the data is correct. I'll make sure it's corrected. You won't even notice. So that's a bit of a help. Also, being able to sync these two tabs, something I wasn't always able to do. I'm getting a little bit better, putting a little bit of work in behind the scenes. Player, of course, QB, RB, wide receiver, tight ends. I'll slow it down when we jump into the actual player stuff. So I guess let's get back into the board, that aforementioned board from before. Read them out in case you're new to drafting like I am. I have a couple under my belt. I've been battle testing my ranks. I get fantasy turned into a year-round thing. My worry sometimes is the ultra focus from the few sharps ends up front-running a market that's being projection-driven. Like mean projections are driving a market that is very much affected by spikes. And I think the momentum of the influencers pushes the pendulum a little bit too far. Know what I mean? So it's not to say you don't want to be listening to all the best ball bros. They're obviously smart guys and know what the fuck they're doing, and they play. But it's a little niche. And once the projections meet the opinions, again, I just think the momentum pushes people a little bit too far. I don't know if that's going to come up in the first round, but it's something I wanted to get to because we run into that in baseball all the time, right? It's not to say that you disagree with projections or you don't use them. It's just understanding that a certain percentage of the population is overweighing them. And then it becomes our job to find where we don't believe in them that much. So it's about using projections, but not so much in the way that we're worried, where people are kind of plugging it into a computer and having that answer the question for us. Gosh, who was talking about it? Had to be someone really sharp. So it was either, I'm not really listening to much right now. So Karain or one of his guys. I really like Pat. I want to try and get him on. It might have been the ETR guys. I didn't really crack open ETR, but it sounds like a Adam thing. The amount of people drafting from their phones and stuff, really, you're ahead of the curve just having ranks. I would say, and it's not just to pump my own stuff, which, I got to be doing. I think having sharp ranks that not so many people are using might be a pathway to edge, meaning the few things that I get right that matter may be different enough from the crowd to make a difference. But we'll see how that shit shakes out. So the first round, I don't know, is it looking predictable? Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN moved all the way up into the middle of the first. Christian McCaffrey, John Taylor, Amon-Ra, Devin H. I was going to say the Achan, and it's Achan? I don't even know. I think this guy's lost me. Oh, no. He was Achan. He is Achan. It's Travis Etienne. It's not Etienne that we thought. That's also Achan. I don't know. I do my best to keep up with shit. People get my name wrong all the fucking time. Who cares? James Cook up at pick 10. I remember seeing that in my last draft. He went like pick 6, and that kind of threw me for a loop. I wasn't really ready for that. CeeDee Lamb and Genty, not to say rounding out the first, but right now they're 11 and 12. We get some consolidation. So I'd say, especially in this era or this iteration of the draft board, anybody up to pick, 15, 16, 18 could go in the turn. The reason I'm saying that, I like Ken Walker at the turn, maybe. I definitely like him more than Barkley and Love. I guess there's a good argument for Chase Brown. Hampton returning lineman for the Chargers. But for me, those guys are at least a toss-up. I definitely like Walker more than I like Barkley. Let's take a look and pop into the running back board. Oh, that sharing happens pretty quick. This could be a lot of fun. I promise I'll get a little bit better as these streams go on. So I'm sorted by ADP. Now, this ADP is a little different than NFBC, but it's more or less going to correlate all the way. Bijan, Jahmyr belong at the top, obviously. All the stuffs and things, and then Gibbs with Montgomery out of the way. You got to love that. Bijan Robinson has Brian Robinson now behind him, who I think is a very cromulent backup and is probably a projectable RB1 if something, God forbid, were to happen to Bijan. But no one's getting in the way of those two kind of dominating the tops of boards. Taylor, I'm a little worried. McCaffrey, I'm a little bit worried, maybe for different reasons. You can see the massive fantasy output. McCaffrey over 24 points a game, Taylor over 21. Both very efficient, over 0.4 fantasy points per snap, and right around 1 fantasy point per touch. Right off the bat, there's got to be at least one fantasy player that's like, holy crap, that's a cool stat. Yeah, those are hard to get a hold of. Look at the McCaffrey efficiency, though, and I know people are going to be beating this to death. You can tell I'm off from the sound of my voice. Eventually, the age curve and getting 5 million touches is going to catch up with somebody. Taylor, way more efficient. Positive EPA to McCaffrey's negative. 5 points better on the success rate. 1.5 better in explosive rush rate. Though Taylor faced far fewer 8-man boxes. McCaffrey over 18%, negative or 0 attempts, I should say, slash. Though his no gain is a negative gain, right? Because you lose it down. Taylor had triple the amount of 20-yard rushes. I mean, look at McCaffrey, just 2 3/4 yards after contact per attempt. Again, the negative EPA per rush and poor success rate. This might not age so well. I mean, it's not aging well. The receiving thing is crazy. I get it. However, San Fran was missing pieces basically all year. Jennings missed a couple games in the first month. Pearsall ended up missing a month and a half in the middle of the season. Ugats from Ayuk, who was supposed to be part of it, bringing in Scantling, that fell apart fast. He was gone by week 6. And you're trying to fill it with, Demarcus Robinson and trying to get more than they should have out of Kendrick Bourne. And it was a disaster. Long story long. There isn't that same kind of just raw target void. Bringing in Mike Evans, bringing in Christian Kirk, then drafting Stribling. I don't like this at all for McCaffrey. And I think this is a pretty good strategic point of attack that I think is very intuitive, but people lose it. So, man, behind McCaffrey is Jordan James and Kalen Black. I gotta look up the James stuff. I don't even know what the hell that. So he was a 5th rounder in 25 with no work. I'm not even sure if he was hurt. I got to take my L's there. Black, I know, is the player more people are interested in. James never really rung for me, 4.5 40 and the 50th percentile speed scores and stuff that I'm never really into. Black, I know people, again, are more excited about. I don't think there's going to be much love there. Now, he kind of lacks in those same places, but from what I understand, he's a bit more of a bruiser, 3rd-round pick last year from Indiana that they thought would be better at getting tough yards. So if we think right off the bat, Black could step in as the better quote-unquote runner right off the bat, what if he's the goal line guy? He's not going nearly late enough. Nearly early enough, I'm sorry. He's going entirely too late at pick 205, especially if we think there's a real pathway if something does happen to McCaffrey. I don't call for injuries. I hate that. James going even after, so the drafting public not on him. So for me, and the point I wanted to get at before I got some of those numbers out was, this is something Norris talks about on the Underdog Network. Those guys are phenomenal. If you take a hard stance in the early part of the draft, I can't see myself taking McCaffrey where he's going. And this isn't, again, to say bust, he's trash. It's none of that. My fair market value is in after the turn, early 2nd. He's legit never going to get there. So I'm never going to have him. And you should follow those logical conclusions to see if they lead to any late game wins. And in this case, granted, this has been a loser year after year after year, right? Chasing, well, not year after last year at least, every other year at least, chasing the McCaffrey handcuff. As long as you're not paying a lot for it, to me, it's a winning pick, even if it doesn't necessarily pay off. Because the hit is going to be tremendous. You're not paying up for it. And it's just that the push and pull of early decision making. I forget exactly who Josh was talking about, but again, the point stands on its own regardless. And it's, well, if you don't like this, you should sure as hell like that. Because if this is going to fail, that's really cheap and has a potential risk reward ratio that you shouldn't look at. And I think that's a mistake that I've made before. Of saying, like, no, I don't like that guy. You know, I'm out on him. So what about the replacement? And it's like, wow, I wasn't proportionally weighing that backup piece. Because in order to get paid off on Kalen Black, for example, you only got to be, I don't know, 5 picks ahead of ADP for him, which still puts him in the back end of the draft. And if you think that you have a chance to hit, and I'd even say this works independent of strategy, identifying really late round RBs that have a chance to fucking pay off. I mean, that's a tale as old as time. But for me, I think it's just more about worrying about the McCaffrey stuff, and it's not trying to predict injuries. He had 129 targets as a running back, 102 catches for 924 and 7. 25% target per route. He's just not going to be able to handle that, I don't think. And I think he'll be explosive, and I think they'll find, in the pass game, I think they'll find ways to create for him. But eventually, this goes poorly, and the price tag is just insane to me. So I think that's my first, real kind of stance as we go back to the ADP board. The McCaffrey stuff is killing me. And not to flick back and forth to Taylor, but I would have Taylor ahead of McCaffrey clearly because I think the physical tools are there. I think at the very least, the guy's still a super stud running the rock. And he's fine in the pass game. What's the worry is the drop-off in the Colts' kind of overall systemic output. When Daniel Jones went down, I don't think he's going to start the year. They're going to go to, I don't know, some guy, some dude. They're going to look for Riley Leonard to get back under center, I'd imagine. Maybe Anthony Richardson competes with him. The orbital bone should be healed, I'd imagine. But right now, he feels kind of gimmicky. Richardson, I mean. At one point, funny to think this guy's going in the top 60 overall picks. Well, you think a guy could run in 2 touchdowns in a game. That'll pay the bills under center. Leonard, if I'm not mistaken, right, he had one good game at the end of the year. Yeah, so he started against, he picked up for Jones in that game against Jacksonville. Defense is really good. He ended up being kind of shitty. He snuck one in, and that saved the day. Then he played against Houston. I can't remember if they were trying to win or not. Indy lost that game. Gosh, I should know this. And Leonard was good. I have this marked down as something I have to rewatch intently. I don't know how much you're going to get from one game of tape, but you get a little bit. I'm just curious to see. I see some footwork and off-platform stuff. Back to the matter at hand, I think Taylor right now is the more complete player, though he's got risk also. I'm not drafting him either right now. Maybe his volume really ticks up if I find myself with lots of late-round picks, or even mid, and I want to balance. I'll get Taylor in there. I don't think he's undraftable. Because, again, if Jones comes back and is even a shell of what we saw, Colts were a damn wagon, and Taylor is, super stud. But at pick 7, you kind of need that right off the rip. I was high on Devin Achane to start. He's kind of blown around the turn into the back end of the first. I think I like Achane over McCaffrey and Taylor, so I would just take Amon-Ra, which is what I've been doing mid-first. The decision to me is how I feel about Lamb opposed to them. I like Lamb better than McCaffrey, and I like Lamb better than Cook. I think I might like Devin Achane more than I like Lamb, however, right? Bought the big, shaking ass. is the 1v1 on the back end. As much as I like H.N., there was a little bit of risk there in Miami, how that offense functions with Willis and the lack of pass catchers to open up the defensive press on the other side. I already told you I like Walker and I like Chase Brown and I like Omari and Hampton. One of those guys is generally there in the middle of the second. Not sure how much I like London. He's the guy I would like. And if, assuming Justin Jefferson is gone, back to the tab, you could see how it dries up. And now you're even pushing up a George Pickens, who's been going much later. McMillan, I'm not sure I want to be attached to Carolina with my wide receiver 1. Or A.J. Brown, who I think there's some value there. You just really much prefer him in the third where he's going rather than, the middle of the second, where I think he easily could pay off, but we want him to go somewhere good and then, reap some fucking CLV. And heaven forbid this guy decides to be a prissy diva and doesn't end up anywhere. Sits on his hands reading self-help books. Let's say he misses a couple weeks. You definitely didn't want a second-round price tag. So I'm starting to fall out of love with all of the back-end running backs. And I think as we do our work, you just want to start to form your opinion on the draft board. Everybody's so in love with sleepers and busts and back-end fucking this and that. 7th round, whatevers. Those should shape directional decisions on the front end. But that's really it. I know I like a lot of running backs, so I want to lean heavy up top. But if where the studs are being shaken out, you have a take, I think that has got to lead the way. First 2 picks especially, kind of setting the foundation. You don't want to be settling at all. Like whatsoever. I mentioned CD. Again, we're not going to go too deep today. Just kind of talk about the first round. We love CD, man. Missed some games, and I get it. No one can predict injuries. I'm not going to try to. He's legit one of the best players, on the planet. I'm looking at the game log now. It comes out 7-110, 9-112, then gets banged up, misses a month, comes back 5-110-1, 774, 785. I mean, he's a fucking superstar, yo. Dak and the boys can bring along more than one pass catcher. So Cowboy stacks are firmly in place. Let's get back into CD. The points per game were a little bit low because he got injured mid-game. I think that was that week 3 game I was alluding to. But he still managed 117 targets, 75, 10, 77, and 3. Over 8 targets per game. We love that. 26% target per route run. We love that. Though it's a little bit lower than the other guys in the first. Again, it's just where we got him. 2.4 yards per route, over 14 yards per catch. Right at 100 air yards per game. All this shit that you're looking for. The explosive catch is there. The thing I wanted to highlight where I think CD kind of stands out, and this is where I like to make, my determinations for top-end wide receivers, is high value. And there are 2 different ways to look at high value. Because one is high value, or I should say, I'm sorry, let me take that back. One is high value, they're all value. One is high quality, low quantity, in combination of something. That's high quality and low quantity. Now, if you would ask, how does the high quantity, low quality stuff work? Because volume matters, especially in PPR. And if you're picking up what I'm putting down, those are slot targets. So let's get back into the spreadsheet. Now, again, my work reeks not only of effort, but probably of a little bit of OCD. And all this stuff will update in real time during the season. I'm going to actually make them a little bit better. I always add some stuff. If you sign up and there's something that's missing from your own work, let me know. And if I got it, I'll add it. So the slot kind of bin is really important. You could see Lamb right up there with Jamar, why he's the number one, and right behind him Monroe, where maybe he's too much. But CD produces from the slot, right? He's targeted and he gets routes. We love that. But also, we want the end zone targets. 12 end zone targets. So I also have red zone targets per game, which I think matter. And he was right up there with the leader, Jefferson on a total basis, Neighbors on a per game basis. So the balance that you get from CD as I talk through it, especially in particular with the way that I feel about the second round running backs, I'm pushing Lamb ahead in my ranks. I want Lamb. I'm not even sure if I have that right now, but this is how you do your stuff. Yeah, I actually have Jefferson ahead of Lamb. I don't think I want Jefferson ahead of Lamb. I think that's a mistake. I'm going to fix all this stuff. I'm worried about my first move. The first time I have to import buying to yours, I'm sure something is going to get effed up. I've been trying to learn how to do logos and syncing. That's why this rankings page now has stats on it. Yeah, so I have, Lamb is already ahead of Jefferson on the NFPC board, but I don't adhere to anybody's work. So I think I'm in lockstep at the top. Means Bijan and Gibbs 1-2, even if there's a fire. And this is coming from Mr. Wide receiver honk. And even though I like second round runners, I don't care, right? Lean into the top side, right? I'll figure it out in the back end. Looking at this board, I got to be honest, I'm a little bit worried of how you're pairing Bijan or Gibbs. I guess it's Pickens or A.J. Brown. If not, feels a little rich for Olave. Are you willing to go with Josh Allen? Feels early for QBs. I think there's a lot of good ones this year. Then you're going back to the well. Oh, I guess Nico is there also. Sorry, let me point this out because I forgot about this. When you play on NFBC, they do third round reversal. Though, frankly, this year in particular, the second and third round ADPs are so muddied. People are all over the place. There is a massive, massive decoupling. But Nico makes me feel a lot better about the third round guys. I'm not really into Rashee Rice. I don't know. There's question marks. There's quarterback questions now. How does Mahomes return? We'll talk about him when we get a little bit later. I want more of a solid base. But I think you get from Olave. I think you're getting all the volume you could stomach on the fast track. Now we think, he's healthy. Off the concussion stuff with somewhat at least an answer with Tyler Shuck under center. So I'm taking Bijan or Jameer at the 1-2, looking to pair with, Pickens, Nico, or Olave, and just kind of going about my beeswax. I know you get the second pick there also. Man, Brock Bowers for sure. And I'm not really crazy about early onesies. I was talking about this during the live streams. Check out the drafts. Press the like button. Subscribe to the channel. That shit matters more than it should. But Bowers in the third is one of the exceptions. Just because, again, I have a lot of question marks. If not, it's Breece Hall. He kind of sticks out for me. I like Achane. Other Achane on the Saints, Travis. I mean, just do the ATN thing, just so people don't get confused. For me, it's early for Javonte. It's early for Bucky. They're worried about his health. I think this is where leagues are going to be won this year. And oh man, breaking news, fucking 8D fucking chess for me. Picking good fantasy football players is going to help you win. I mean, you should subscribe to the work. But what I mean is, who's going to have the courage to plant the flags for the two late third rounders at the turn? Because I really think it's become so gray that it's like, it's just all good in the hood, almost, no matter how we go to it. So I think we're going to get out of here. Maybe I will take a look at the back end really quick, the running backs, and see if I could form an opinion before we just move on, right? Because I guess that's the last piece. Is we love to be Bijan and Gibbs. Then for me, it's Chase. I think I might like JSN more than Puka. Puka is a damn crash test dummy. And I think there's a little bit of QB risk with Stafford and the injuries. I guess they drafted a guy. Maybe that works. JSN, I think, for a first year with Darnold, maybe a little bit of growth, repetition, and continuity. I don't think you could go wrong with either. No problem. I personally like JSN. Then again, I'm bouncing McCaffrey out, Taylor out. Taylor back because I like Achane better. He goes behind Amon-Ra, CD, so those are my guys. If for some reason Taylor makes it to the back end, like, yeah, for sure. Let's take a look at the top end running backs before we get out of here. Kind of cool. I like that I had a chance to show off some of the tools, and you could see, even if you're under the gun in a draft, the tools work fast enough to search. Maybe not so much an underdog with 20 seconds, but if you have like a 90-second clock, you should be able to get an opinion out of here. So here we have Cook, Genty, and Devon Achane next to each other. Man, Achane with the big point per game total. Cook had the big volume on the ground, which we love, though the snap count was low, but Buffalo's offense is so good. And he had the big YPA, really good before contact. Remember, that's more of a team context thing. Achane was the best after contact, though I might make the exception for Genty's 306 after contact being the best, because the before contact stuff was so poor, like a third of what everyone else's is, like a quarter of Cook's. And if Vegas is at all a threat, Genty is going to be awesome. You're just not going to see it because of the systemic rot on that team. But he was also super effective in the pass game for a rookie. You'd love to see this. 15% of the team targets, 73 targets for 55, 346, and 5. And unlike McCaffrey, the Raiders haven't really gone out and addressed the pass catching room. They're going to be looking for high percentage looks for Mendoza, even for Cousins. We know he's not running, whoever it is. There's a lot of things to like about, Genty. I don't think I'd push him above Cook because I think the environment in Buffalo is much better. And, that just translated into Cook had 52 red zone carries, man. Caught some targets in there, too. So I don't really think you could go wrong with any three of those. For me, it's, man, I don't know. Maybe it is James Cook over Devon Achane. And if I said otherwise before, that's why we're doing this work. But I've got him really close. But I think just being attached to Josh Allen and all the touchdowns in Buffalo is worth it, because there is really a potential floor case systemically for the Dolphins. The same case probably for the Raiders, but I think they've done such a better job of surrounding them with talent. Remember, they also went and brought in Tyler Linderbaum to play center. Colton Miller comes back at left tackle, and the skill positions were already there, right? No one is complaining that Brock Bowers sucks. It's like Tucker and Naylor, Jack Bech, Dante Thornton in a wide receiver room. So you got to think Genty in line for a bunch of catches. The defense, I don't know if they're going to be any good. So I definitely want to make sure if I have a late pick, I think that's another determination before we leave, that if I end up with a round pick, I want to make sure I've got at least one running back. I'm almost feeling that way universally. I think I'm walking away from this episode with that And I'll see after the second round next time. Not saying we're doing second round next time. I'll probably do a draft, maybe 2 drafts and a round, 2 drafts and a round, and, have our opinions kind of form. Running backs are entirely too important, and with the meta changing, you got to leave the first 2 rounds with one. I hate talking absolutes because, right, if you don't, and then you load up and you end up with, who knows, Trevion and Brees Hall and Bashal Tutin, maybe those act as RB1s, but you got to hit on so many of them. And a lot of them are going for a reason. Not to say those questions can't be answered with injuries and shit, but just saying. I want to leave with a running back from the first 2 rounds because I can't believe Love is going to pick 19. I want nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that shit. I'm going to end up with Algier in every single draft. He stole goal line carries from Bijan Robinson. Don't tell me there's not a chance he outplays Love as a rookie. I don't want to hear that. You miss me with that shit. Then we do prospect analysis differently. Because right off the bat, I ding you for not being able to handle the speed of the game and the traveling and the money and the bitches. It's part of it, yo. So I guess I should correct that and say leaving it with one of my running backs is I don't want Henry and I don't really want Barkley, though I'll go to Barkley. I don't want Love at all. I will draft Brown. I will draft Hampton. I love Walker. Right? I don't know. Irving is worrying me. I'd rather have Gainwell. Javonte worries me, though I understand being part of that offense with the TD equity. And ATN, for the Saints, whatever. I also like. I think they brought him in for a featured role. So I think that'll do it for the first round review. If you hear me, follow me up on Twitter at John the Gazer. See the handle right down there. Samples of my work over on Substack, the pin post. You don't have to pay to see it. You can kind of scroll the Twitter feed right now also, though it's mostly baseball. If you're into baseball, all the shit is included in the same $2. Every day, it's just so much shit. It's almost too much to run through. Ranks and stats, projections. I do modeling plus picks. And then NFL stuff. It's everything you see that's going to get updated. Plus, there's team differentials. I guess maybe I should bring those up because those are really worth the cost of admission. Point differential, plays per game diff, yards per play, EPA per dropback, yards per attempt, points per drive, explosive play differential. EPA per dropback differential is so fucking valuable if you're into betting and trying to just anticipate pace and points and stuff. I'm telling you, man. So I do all the work so you don't have to. Even if you know where to get this stuff, for you to get it and do it and format it and then time split it, once it happens, I'm doing it for $2 a week, man. Trying to save you time, the most precious commodity. Speaking of which, let's get the fuck out of here. Know what I'm saying? I gotta hear it one more time. I am such a mark for retro Tecmo Bowl. All right, so thanks for picking up what I'm putting down. Subscribe to the channel, press like, and if you think the stats and the rankings something you want to hook up with, $2 a week, baby. If you sign up for the year, you get the last month for free, so it's like $1.65 a week in that case. Come on, baby. That'll do it. Enjoy the games, enjoy the day. When we done with the book, enjoy the pay, and remember, when you work this freaking hard, man, the winning feels a